Hey, good morning there, Borrego Lutheran Church family. How's everybody doing? Wow. God bless you. I hope you're all doing good. Well, here we are, the 20th Sunday after Pentecost, October 23rd, 2022. Hey, our text, again, continuation in Luke, where we've been for almost all of Pentecost. It's Luke 18, verses 9 through 14. And the title for today's message is, Hey, No Cuts. All right. Without any further ado, let's go ahead and we'll have our prayer. We'll read our text and then we'll hop into our message. Our Lord Jesus, you have endured the doubts and foolish questions of every generation. Forgive us for trying to be judge over you, and grant us the confident faith to acknowledge you as Lord. And again, the Gospel of Luke, chapter 18, beginning at the 9th verse. He also told this parable to some who trusted in themselves that they were righteous and treated others with contempt. 2 men went up to the temple to pray, one a Pharisee and the other a tax collector. The Pharisee, standing by himself, prayed, Thus, God, I thank you that I am not like other men, extortioners, unjust, adulterers, or even like this tax collector. I fast twice a week. I give tithes of all that I get. But the tax collector, standing far off, would not even lift up his eyes to heaven, but beat his breast, saying, God, be merciful to me, a sinner. I tell you, this man went down to his house justified rather than the other. For everyone who exalts himself will be humbled, but the one who humbles himself will be exalted. You know, we can learn a lot from standing in line. You know, there's the ethical crime of cutting in line, but we also need to consider standing in the wrong line. You know, perhaps you've waited, in a line a long time, right? And when your turn comes up, you're told that you were in the wrong line. You ever have that happen? Right? And you've got to go start all over again. Well, there are many people in the church who, in a sense, stand in the wrong line. They spend lots of time without really knowing why they are here. They were probably put in this line, so to speak, right, by their families a long time ago. They can meet with their friends and their relatives while they wait in line. And, there's also maybe a lot of other reasons for them to spend time here. Lots of activities to, occupy them. But they are also not upset if they lose their place in line, right? There's no rush or anxiety if they don't really know why they're there. They may also miss their turn or drop in and out of line, but they can always come back another time, right? Some people are in the church line, if you will, for political or social reasons. They want church to make declarations on this or that topic, right? These people are also in the wrong line without knowing it. Now, in a line, you are waiting to meet someone at the front of the line, right? But are you in the line to meet the right person? And do you know how to meet him? Now, today's gospel shows us 2 people that are waiting in the church line. The Pharisee was first of all a line cutter, right? He walked right past everybody else and he took up the front position. He had priority, a better claim to attention than anybody else. His credentials, as he saw it, were proof and evidence of his rights. The Pharisee knew that he knew his way around, and he knew that politeness usually pays, so he politely thanked God. But it was merely politeness because he did not receive anything from God. So, to be thankful is to respond to a gift, right? But the Pharisee, he just knew that he did not need any help or gift. He trusted himself, right? Yet it was nice to be polite. So he thanked God. Now, as the Pharisee stood at God's desk, so to speak, he looked around at other people waiting in line and he found them pathetic. He spotted the man who had made money swindling farmers. The Pharisee looked sternly at a little child's noise and even more sternly at the mother. The Pharisee did not see anybody that he could admire, right? There was nobody like himself. So this made him feel comfortable and pleased. You know, it is easier to be content if we see somebody else that is, when we see somebody else as less right than ourselves. When things go wrong in our lives, we can be consoled by the fact that others are worse off than we. You know, no matter how depraved we are, we can still name somebody more depraved to look down on, right? We crave something excellent in us that raises us above others. You know, this superiority is then emphasized. So, for instance, if we have powerful muscles, we scorn people with weaker ones. The person with the quick mind will make fun of a slow person. You know, the thinner person may feel superior to the heavier person. If someone is musically talented, he may regard unmusical people as, less than himself. And when we feel inferior to anybody, to some point, we quickly discover some other point in which we are superior. Now, for instance, although so-and-so may be more well-liked than we are, right, we make more money. Or although they have great children, they cannot spend as much as we do. Theoretical communism, or perfect equality, will never work. For we would be utterly miserable if we could not find somebody less than ourselves, somebody to look down on, somebody to make us more pleased with ourselves. Now, the Pharisee had no difficulty in finding people less than himself, so he felt fine. He listed his superiorities. He fasted twice a week while, ordinary people only fasted once. The common people were such dreadful sinners that the Pharisees, who did not have much or any sin right to atone for, fasted for the sake of other people's sins. And these other people should realize how sinful they were in comparison to the Pharisees, right? Therefore, it was the custom on Tuesdays and Thursdays to fast with special public prayers and services. Tuesdays and Thursdays were the market days, right? And everyone would be in Jerusalem to see those pious Pharisees fasting for the sins of other people. Now, the Pharisees acted similarly with their tithe, right? The law of God required a tenth of one's produce or income. Many farmers and traders did not give the required tenth. So to point out that sin, the Pharisees had the habit of giving not only a tenth of their own produce and income, but also a tenth of what they bought. The Pharisees knew that they were likely buying untithed goods. So to have no part in this robbing of the Lord, the Pharisees tithed on such purchases also. So this cost them a lot. And we know that one's money is usually the last thing to come under the control of the love of Christ. So you see, these Pharisees did have a lot to show for themselves. So we must be careful not to despise the Pharisees. They lived clean, decent, useful lives. They felt a keen responsibility for the welfare of their people, and they did their utmost to fulfill the law of God. So before we despise them, we should compare their exemplary lives with our own. So how many of us are ready to give 10% twice over the Lord? Nor may we assert our superiority by saying that our good works, right? Saying that good works, saying that they had good works, if you will, that do not count. So, just because we didn't do that, we have faith, right? So this is a favorite way with us lazy Lutherans, if you will. We see others doing so much for various causes, and we say, yes, that is true, but we Lutherans have the true gospel. We're justified by faith alone and not by works. We thank God that we are not as others are. Roman Catholics pray to Mary, Anglicans who muddle the gospel, etc., right? No, my friends, we may not condemn the Pharisee. You must learn to recognize and condemn this Pharisee, right? This Pharisee is the hardest one of all to recognize. A Pharisee is always looking at other people rather than looking down, or rather looking down on other people and seeing them as less than himself, sizing them up as less than himself, right? The Pharisee measures himself according to other people and finds himself bigger and better than they. So this is not even the height of Phariseeism. That is, people taking the law of God and using it for their own self-glorification, right? Strutting before God and expecting him to agree with their good opinion of themselves. God becomes a mere assistant, if you will, to one's self-admiration. And such people are at the furthest distance, if you will, from God. For between themselves and the living, personal, holy God, they have put the law of God, transformed into a set of rules according to which they can pronounce favorable judgment on themselves, glorify themselves, and then trust in their own rightness, and then despise others. My dear friends, there is a Pharisee in us all. So how often do we look at other people and find them inferior? How much of our thanks to God is not based on our indebtedness for what he has given? How much of our Christianity is thought of as being nice, decent persons whom others can admire? Such self-regarding morality blocks us off from God, from looking upward to him and seeing ourselves alone in his presence. You know, there was someone there that day, right? The day of when our gospel lesson, the story in our gospel lesson, that knew he stood in the presence of God, the personal living God. And he was afraid. He did not dare go right into the sanctuary. That was for the good people, the people who had tamed God and gotten him under their control, right? This man knew he did not belong in the church, so he stayed outside. He did not think that he knew how to pray. He lacked the fine praises and outward gestures. He just blurted out the truth about himself, standing alone in the presence of God. He was a sinner, and mercy was his only hope. Now, the true realization of sin does not come as we compare ourselves with other people, right? It comes in the presence of the living, personal, holy God. When we stand before God with every deceit and pretense stripped off, we can see what we amount to, right? God is the standard by which we will be judged, right? He says, "You shall be holy, for I, the Lord your God, am holy." And we are not the least bit the way he is, right? We are sinners. And as long as we look at ourselves in comparison with other people's performances, we shall not know what or who we are. The recognition of what we are or who we are comes only when we look up to God and stand before him alone. Now imagine a refugee waiting in a passport line with papers that aren't quite right or quite straight, right? Hoping for freedom and another chance at life. That is fear, that situation, right, would be fear and desperation. His only hope is that the official can be fooled. Now, when you step before God, there is no hope in trying to fool him. Your faulty papers cannot establish your right to freedom and a new life. So when you face God, no papers, recommendations, or references will help you. You stand there as who or what you are, right? You know that he knows what you are. So if you try to make a deal, your chances are ruined. If you try to bribe an honest man, he will not accept it. God is the most honest of all. You cannot make a deal with God. You cannot buy God off. So anything you get from God is a gift. So if you claim your rights from him, you will get them. And that will be the end of you. So if you claim your rights from him, in other words, you will get them, right? And then ultimately that'll be the end of you, similar to the Pharisee. So the Pharisee, he claimed his rights. He spoke for God and gave the verdict. He declared himself righteous. He did not need God. He did admirably without God. Therefore he went down to the house without God. Now the tax collector, he knew all of his rights were forfeited. He gave God the right to condemn and reject him, and only by the mercy of God could he stand. He cried to God for mercy, and he returned to his house having received mercy. Instead of returning without God like the Pharisee, he returned with God. You see, the tax collector was in the right line. He was in the line that was marked for sinners only. Now, not that a sin recommends one to God. Actually, it's quite the reverse. Our God neither condemns the exemplary life of the Pharisee, nor does he condemn the disreputable life of the tax collector. The crucial point is that the Pharisee negotiates with God, calculates, and tells God the answer. God is expected merely to, nod his approval. Now, God has no choice but to accept and admire this splendid man, right? The tax collector surrenders every claim and calculation. The decision rests with God. Hence, God has the possibility of showing mercy. And mercy is only possible when you surrender yourself into the hands and the decision of God. Right? Where there is not God's mercy, there is only hell. Now the Pharisee, he did not surrender himself to the hands of the decision of God. The tax collector did. The tax collector went down to his house justified. He was given mercy. He was forgiven. Now he was God's free, glad, and grateful man. You know you have to come to church. Now you know, you who, pardon my language, who have come to church this morning, right? You must ask yourselves this question. In what line do I stand? And remember that in the church of the Nativity of Bethlehem, the entrance door is small and low, right? It's only possible to get in on your knees. Just a thought for this morning. In Jesus Christ's holy and ever precious name, amen. I love you all. I pray you're all doing well. Have a fantastic day.